Michelle Parker never thought her life could shatter so quickly. One day she was the glowing wife of a millionaire, admired for her poise and kindness. The next, she found herself alone, pregnant, and parked in a dimly lit supermarket lot, desperately trying to sleep behind the steering wheel of her old sedan. How did it come to this? Whispers of betrayal and the sting of infidelity pushed her out of the mansion she called home. And yet fate had only begun unveiling its secrets. A mysterious phone call and a clandestine invitation would soon change the course of Michelle's life forever. Michelle Harris grew up in the modest suburbs of St. Louis, Missouri. Her upbringing was comfortable but never luxurious. Her father, Robert Harris, worked as a history teacher at a local high school, while her mother, June, managed a small daycare from their home. From a young age, Michelle learned the value of caring for others. Summers found her elbow-deep in chores at her mother's daycare, playing games with toddlers and soothing, teary-eyed babies. In a household that constantly bustled with children's laughter, she never once imagined herself living a grand, extravagant life. Yet, as Michelle finished her degree in marketing at Washington University in St. Louis, she dreamed of using her talents to climb the corporate ladder. She spent hours in the library, devouring marketing case studies and meticulously crafting plans for small local businesses in her free time. The side gigs paid little, but they earned her a reputation for creativity and diligence. It was during an off-site training session for a startup company that Michelle met Adrian Parker. Adrian, tall, charismatic, and with eyes that seemed to promise adventure, walked into the conference room and stole her breath away. He was there to speak about business, strategy, brand influence, and how to capture investors' attention. At only 34, Adrian was already a millionaire, the CEO of an investment firm called Parker Grant Holdings, known for backing innovative tech projects. Rumor had it he'd once pitched a joint venture to none other than Elon Musk, but the details were hush-hush. By the time he walked off the stage that day, Michelle couldn't get him out of her mind. Their first conversation took place by the snack table, a relatively unassuming place for a budding romance. She was fussing with the coffee machine. He was trying to decide between a chocolate-filled croissant or a plain one. They laughed at their mutual indecision, an inconsequential moment that blossomed into something extraordinary. Within minutes, Michelle felt as if she'd known him her entire life. Adrian was witty, engaging, and genuinely intrigued by her ideas. He jotted down her contact on a notepad and casually said, "I have a feeling we'll meet again," before sliding it into his suit pocket. Adrian called her 3 days later. They arranged a date at a rooftop bar in the central West End. It was there, beneath the glow of string lights and amidst soft jazz music, that Michelle discovered Adrian had an old soul. He loved big band tunes and had a penchant for surprising his companions with thoughtful gifts. That night he gave her a first-edition marketing book by David Ogilvy, a gesture that left her speechless. After hours of conversation, their connection felt palpably real, built on shared passions, insatiable curiosity, and the electricity of new love. Their relationship skyrocketed from that first date. Within 6 months, Adrian proposed on a snowy evening while they visited Chicago for a business trip. He organized a fancy dinner at the Signature Room on the 95th floor, orchestrating an entire ensemble of violinists to serenade them during dessert. The ring he offered her was modest by millionaire standards, but precious in its simple elegance, a solitaire diamond that sparkled with promise. Michelle tearfully accepted her heart, dancing with excitement at the thought of forever. When they married, everything felt like a fairy tale. The wedding took place on the lush grounds of a vineyard near Napa Valley. Michelle wore a flowing ivory gown, while Adrian sported a crisp black tuxedo. They exchanged vows under a floral arch, with the golden California sun dipping behind them, as if nature itself blessed their union. Close friends and family clinked glasses in celebration, and the newlyweds waltzed into a future that seemed nothing short of perfect. Yet lurking beneath the veneer of wealth and romance was a truth neither suspected. Money can mend many problems, but it can also create new ones. Over the next 2 years, Adrian's fortune grew exponentially. Parker Grant Holdings financed a series of lucrative ventures, placing him in the spotlight of major business publications. Their mansion in St. Louis rivaled homes in Beverly Hills, featuring a marble foyer, a crystal chandelier imported from Italy, and an expansive backyard, complete with a lagoon-style pool. Despite the glamour, Michelle remained grounded. She continued her marketing work, shifting from small gigs to philanthropic branding projects, frequently collaborating with charities like the American Cancer Society. She wanted her own achievements separate from Adrian's fortune. She believed in a partnership of equals, even if her bank account was dwarfed by his. The seeds of trouble were sown quietly. Adrian, once doting and attentive, began missing dinners and phone calls. He brushed off Michelle's concerns with hurried excuses: investors in town, urgent meeting, emergency board vote. While his business soared, his personal life with Michelle began to falter. She would wait in their expansive living room, nerves taut, phone in hand, as the clock neared midnight, just hoping for a text or call from her husband. Some nights she'd lie awake, staring at the empty space in their bed, wondering if success had turned Adrian into a man she hardly knew. Pregnancy was not part of the original plan, at least not yet. They'd discussed having children, but wanted a more stable, personal routine first. Fate had a different intention. The day Michelle discovered she was pregnant, her heart fluttered between excitement and fear. She imagined telling Adrian over a romantic dinner, or maybe surprising him with a small box containing baby shoes. But that night, he came home in a foul mood, weighed down by stress and reeking of expensive whiskey. She tried to give him a back rub, sensing his tension, but he only snapped at her. "I need sleep, Michelle," he barked. "I've got a flight to New York at dawn." She swallowed her hurt and slipped into bed without telling him the news. Days passed before she finally told him. Instead of hugging her and dancing around the living room, as she hoped, he wore a conflicted expression. "Are you sure you want to keep it now?" he asked, his voice flat. Michelle felt a chill. She was stunned he'd even question it. In the weeks that followed, Adrian's schedule became more erratic. He left earlier, came home later if he came home at all. Her pregnancy cravings and morning sickness were overshadowed by an unshakable dread. She felt invisible, an afterthought in his life. Whenever she tried to address it, he offered lavish gifts, designer handbags, diamond bracelets, attempting to placate her with tokens of wealth instead of genuine attention. But Michelle wasn't a fool. She knew the signs of a relationship in peril. Whispers of a rumored affair reached her ears through the very social circles she'd once navigated with ease. Women at charity events shot her pitying glances. Men who admired her philanthropic zeal seemed hesitant to speak openly about the rumors, but the look in their eyes said enough. Something was wrong. One friend, Kelly Reyes, a public relations expert Michelle had worked with, pulled her aside after a charity gala for UNICEF. She awkwardly shifted her gaze and said, "Michelle, I hate to be the one to say it, but I've heard chatter that Adrian's been spotted in questionable circumstances. It might be wise to talk to him." Michelle's lips quivered. She thanked Kelly for her concern. Yet that night, she confronted Adrian The moment he stepped into their marble foyer, the sound of his footsteps echoing in the silent house. He shook his head in denial, feigning outrage. "You actually believe gossip over your own husband?" he spat, tossing his blazer onto a couch. She tried to read his eyes to find some trace of regret or heartbreak at her accusation. Instead, she saw only anger and something else. Fear. "You're the one who hasn't been around," Michelle retorted, her voice catching. "How am I supposed to trust you when you're never here?" The fight escalated. Adrian stormed out, leaving Michelle sobbing quietly in the living room. The proof arrived in the cruelest way possible through paparazzi photos plastered on a gossip site. A tipster had snapped pictures of Adrian stepping out of a luxury hotel in New York, arm in arm, with a stunning brunette in a form-fitting black dress. The expression on his face was unmistakably affectionate as he escorted the woman into a waiting limousine. Later, more photos emerged of them dining at a Michelin-starred restaurant, the two of them looking every bit like a glamorous power couple. Michelle discovered these pictures late at night while scrolling through her phone, half hoping to find some sign of Adrian's whereabouts. Instead, her heart shattered. The ache in her chest was almost unbearable. She stared at her reflection in the glossy marble floor of the bathroom, her hands trembling as she tried not to sink into despair. For 2 nights, she kept the revelation to herself. She felt paralyzed, her mind alternating between heartbreak and an irrational hope that this was all some misunderstanding. On the 3rd night, Adrian arrived home, smelling of bourbon and fresh cologne. Michelle confronted him, phone in hand, pictures on the screen. He didn't deny it. Didn't even try. Instead, he stared her down. His face twisted in annoyance. "So what if I'm seeing someone else?" he said, bitterness dripping from his voice. "You've been distant. All you do is talk about the baby." The cruelty in his words felt like a dagger to her soul. "You promised me forever," she croaked, tears welling in her eyes. She could barely stand upright as her entire body quaked. She placed a protective hand over her small baby bump. "Why would you do this now when we're starting a family?" Adrian shrugged as though bored. "I told you I'm not sure I want this child. And you were too consumed with your charity work, your marketing projects, your perfect illusions." He rubbed his temples. "I need something else." Michelle felt the last remnants of her fairy tale crumble at her feet. She had no words. The silence suffocated them both until she tore up the staircase, tears staining her cheeks, and locked herself in a guest bedroom. She packed only a small suitcase with clothes, her laptop, and essential documents. She took one last look at the mansion's corridor, the intricately carved wainscoting, the glistening chandeliers, and walked out. Outside in the driveway, she realized she had nowhere to go. Their entire life was in that home. She had few close friends in St. Louis, and her parents lived in a modest townhouse that hardly had space for another occupant, let alone a pregnant daughter. Pride also kept her from wanting to face them with such heartbreak. The only option left was her car. It was a 2012 Toyota Camry, a gift from her dad when she graduated college. Michelle sat in the driver's seat, scanning her phone contacts, searching for someone. Anyone she could call at midnight. She felt sick physically and emotionally. The baby in her womb deserved so much better than this turmoil. But she couldn't think. She turned the ignition and drove aimlessly through dark roads, tears streaming down her face. Michelle ended up parked in a quiet corner of a 24-hour supermarket lot, the fluorescence of streetlights giving the place a ghostly glow. She tilted her seat back as far as it would go, hugging a soft blanket around her shoulders. Every so often, a security guard's flashlight beam would slice through the darkness, but no one questioned her presence. The hum of cars and the shuffle of late-night shoppers became her lullaby for a night she'd never forget. Morning sickness assaulted her in the early hours. She stumbled out of the car, nausea rolling through her. She barely made it to a nearby patch of grass in time. By dawn, she was exhausted physically and spiritually. She tried calling a few acquaintances, only to reach voicemails. The clock crept toward 8 a.m., and Michelle realized she needed a plan, and fast. She thought of her friend Kelly Reyes, the PR specialist who had warned her. Taking a chance, she dialed Kelly's number. Kelly answered on the third ring, her voice thick with sleep. But when Michelle's tear-strained words spilled out, Kelly became fully alert. "I'm on my way," she said. Within half an hour, Kelly arrived with a to-go mug of chamomile tea and a sympathetic hug. They drove to a nearby diner. Over eggs and toast, Michelle recounted the entire ordeal, Adrian's affair, his callous confession, her departure in the middle of the night, and now her uncertain future. Kelly pressed her hand gently. "Michelle, you can't live in your car. Come stay with me. My apartment isn't huge, but at least it's a safe space." Relief and gratitude flooded Michelle. She agreed. That morning, she packed what few belongings she had in her trunk and followed Kelly's sedan to a modest one-bedroom apartment near Washington Avenue. True to her word, Kelly cleared out a space in the living room, setting up a cozy air mattress and some bedding. For the next few days, Michelle attempted to compose herself. She needed to think through her next move. Should she file for divorce? Try to reconcile? Demand spousal support? The thought of confronting Adrian again made her stomach twist with both anger and a lingering sense of betrayal. Meanwhile, Kelly insisted she speak to a lawyer. "You're pregnant with his child," Kelly reminded her. "You have rights." Michelle booked a consultation with a well-known family law attorney, Lisa Green, who had handled high-profile cases involving wealthy spouses. The law firm had references from one of Michelle's philanthropic colleagues, so she felt at least somewhat secure in the attorney's expertise. Arriving at the downtown office, she was ushered into a minimalist conference room with sweeping views of the Mississippi River. Lisa was all business, her precise words delivering a brutal reality check. "Adrian has considerable assets. If he contests custody or tries to limit child support, we'll have a fight on our hands. But you have strong grounds here, given the infidelity and your unborn child." Michelle nodded, chewing her lip. Money, ironically, was the least of her worries. Her heartbreak overshadowed any financial concerns. She wanted to ensure her baby would have a stable future. Yes, but what she truly yearned for was an end to the nightmares. Each night, she dreamed of Adrian's cruel eyes, of the woman in the black dress, and the heartache that followed. She awoke each morning, trying to tell herself it was just a nightmare, only to recall it was all too real. After a week spent mourning her marriage, Michelle received an unexpected email. The sender's address was cryptic, email protected. The subject line read, "Urgent meeting request RE. Adrian Parker." Her pulse spiked as she clicked it open. "Dear Ms. Parker, you do not know me, but I possess crucial information about Adrian Parker that could affect your future and the future of your child. I would like to discuss this with you in person. I assure you I have nothing to gain but the truth. If you're willing, please meet me at 7 p.m. tomorrow at the Riverfront Overlook Cafe in Forest Park." A friend. Michelle's skepticism flared. This had to be a trap. or at best a ruse by some tabloid seeking a juicy story. She forwarded the email to Kelly, who shared her caution. You can't just go alone to meet a stranger who claims to have information about Adrian, Kelly warned, brow furrowed with concern. Yet curiosity gnawed at Michelle. What could this person possibly know? Was there more to Adrian's affair, or some hidden aspect of his business dealings that explained his sudden coldness? If it led to answers or even closure, she had to pursue it. At exactly 7 p.m. the following evening, she entered the Riverfront Overlook Cafe, her stomach swirling with nerves. Kelly accompanied her, albeit seated a few tables away, trying to blend in with the evening crowd. The cafe buzzed with chatter from university students, families and couples seeking a scenic view. Michelle's breath caught each time the door opened. Finally, a man in his early 50s, wearing a tweed blazer and carrying a small leather briefcase, stepped in. He scanned the room until his gaze settled on Michelle. He approached her table, removing his hat politely. "Michelle Parker?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. She nodded, swallowing hard. "My name is Charles Reynolds," he continued. I used to be an accountant for Parker Grant Holdings." Charles sat setting his briefcase on the seat next to him. With a trembling hand, he opened it and pulled out a slim folder. "I came because I discovered discrepancies in Adrian's finances," he said, voice tense. "And I believe these discrepancies are tied to his personal dealings, possibly including the affair." He sighed, steeling himself. "I know it's not my place, but what he's doing is wrong." I couldn't stay silent anymore. Michelle's heart hammered. "What exactly did you find?" Charles explained that he'd come across numerous unauthorized transfers, totaling hundreds of thousands of dollars from Parker Grant Holdings accounts into a private LLC Adrian had created. Initially, Charles thought Adrian might be funneling money into a new project. But the amounts were suspicious, the timing too erratic. Then Charles discovered that some of the funds were used for extravagant personal expenses, luxury jewelry, five-star hotels, and real estate in a woman's name. The same woman Charles suspected who was pictured in those paparazzi photos. Michelle's blood ran cold. "Why are you telling me this?" Charles's expression softened. "I have a wife and kids. I know how it feels to worry about family. If Adrian is using company funds in this manner, it could lead to major legal consequences, fraud, embezzlement, who knows what else. And he's endangering everyone around him, including you and your child. Not to mention if a scandal breaks Parker Grant. Holdings could implode, leaving you and your baby unprotected." She leaned back, speechless. Adrian's betrayal now extended beyond their marital vows. He was risking everything potentially on some reckless gamble with his mistress. "Is there proof?" she managed, her voice shaky. "Plenty." Charles nodded. "I made copies before I resigned. They're in secure storage, but I can share them with you. I just want to ensure you're prepared. I emailed you because, from what I've gathered, Adrian hasn't treated you fairly. The board suspects something is amiss, but Adrian is cunning. He's managed to keep the truth buried." Michelle's mind spun. This was bigger than an affair. It was a ticking time bomb that could destroy the father of her child and everything she'd worked for. She thanked Charles for his courage. He offered her the folder. Inside were partial statements, redacted wire transfers, and the name of the LLC AP Discretionary Ventures. The word discretionary felt like a gut punch, as if everything about her life had become disposable in Adrian's eyes. Before they parted, Charles gave her a burner phone number. "If you decide to act on this, give me a call," he said. Watching him leave, Michelle felt like she'd stepped onto a precipice. She had a choice: expose Adrian's misdeeds and protect herself, or remain silent and hope the situation somehow fixed itself. She glanced at Kelly, who looked at her questioningly from across the cafe. Michelle and Kelly returned to the apartment, sprawled the documents on the dining table, and pored over them until late at night. The next morning, Michelle made an urgent appointment with Lisa Green, her attorney. Lisa's eyes widened as she skimmed the paperwork. "This changes everything," she murmured. "Adrian could face serious legal repercussions. You may have leverage to secure a fair settlement for you and your unborn child, but it also places you in a precarious position if he learns you have these documents." The question loomed: should they confront Adrian or present the information to the board of Parker Grant Holdings? Should they threaten legal action? Lisa advised caution. "We should approach this step by step. Let me discreetly speak with a colleague who handles corporate fraud. In the meantime, keep these documents hidden and stay safe. Adrian is known to have powerful allies." The storm gathered, and Michelle felt it in her bones. She reached out to Adrian's personal secretary, a polite but guarded woman named Jenna Patterson, to request a meeting. Jenna sounded surprised, but eventually fit Michelle in for a lunch the following week at a well-known steakhouse Owl's on First, presumably because Adrian liked to maintain appearances in public. Perhaps he thought it was safer to meet there than behind closed doors. When Michelle arrived, her stomach churned with anxiety. Adrian sat in a private booth checking his phone. He was impeccably dressed, as always, but lines of stress etched his forehead. The moment Michelle slid into the seat opposite him, a tense hush fell over them. "Well," Adrian said, swirling a glass of water, "you wanted to meet." There was no greeting, no concern for how she was. No mention of the child she carried. Michelle inhaled deeply. "I want a divorce, Adrian." He twitched through, whether from shock or annoyance, she couldn't tell. "I should have expected this." His tone was dismissive. "Let's talk settlement. I'll give you a lump sum you sign NDAs, and we never see each other again." She narrowed her eyes. "It's not that simple. I have proof you're misusing company funds." His face paled. He set down the glass a little too forcefully, water sloshing. "Where did you get that?" His voice was low and threatening. She held his gaze, even though her heart hammered like a drum in her chest. "I'm not going to reveal my source. But if you continue this path, it will destroy everything, including Parker Grant. If a fraud investigation is launched, you could face jail time. Do you have any idea what that would mean for our child?" Adrian's facade cracked, revealing panic. He pressed his lips together, glancing around to make sure no one overheard. "You think you can blackmail me?" he hissed. "Because that's what this is, Michelle." She shook her head. "No. I just want to ensure I'm not left picking up the pieces. I want a fair divorce settlement, child support, and an acknowledgement of wrongdoing. That's all." He leaned back, exhaling. A conflicted flicker crossed his features. "You're pregnant with my child," he said, quieter this time. For a moment he sounded almost remorseful. Then the hardness returned to his eyes. "Fine," he muttered. "Draw up your terms, give them to your lawyer, and we'll discuss. But if you so much as leak those documents, I'll make sure you regret it." Michelle refused to wilt under his threat. "Stop funneling money to that mistress. End it, Adrian, or I swear the board will know by the end of the week." He stared at her for a few seconds, a swirl of anger and dread behind his gaze. Then he rose and threw a few bills on the table for the untouched lunch. "Have a nice day," he said tersely. and walked out. As Michelle drove away, she glanced down at the seatbelt crossing her belly and whispered a silent prayer for her baby. She knew she was gambling with forces much larger than herself, but she had no choice. She had to protect her child's future. Over the next few days, Michelle felt no relief, only a building sense of danger. Adrian hadn't reached out with any official statements or settlements. She feared he might be plotting something more nefarious. Sleepless nights plagued her. Kelly kept reassuring her that Lisa Green's legal team was strong and that Charles Reynolds was still willing to testify if needed. Then a surprising message arrived in Michelle's email. Subject: another friend. Inside, she found an invitation to a second secret meeting at a private lounge in the Chase Park Plaza Hotel. The email claimed this meeting involved interested parties from Parker Grant Holdings who wanted to speak with Michelle discreetly. Her first instinct was to reject it. She'd had enough cloak and dagger encounters. But Lisa urged caution and curiosity. It could be board members who want to handle this matter internally. If they're offering a private meeting, it might lead to a swifter resolution. So a few nights later, Michelle found herself in a luxurious, dimly lit lounge. She recognized a hush-hush ambience, plush seating, low chatter, and elegantly dressed patrons sipping top-shelf liquor. She wore a simple black dress that comfortably accommodated her small baby bump. Kelly accompanied her for moral support, waiting in the lobby. Michelle was directed to a secluded corner table by a hostess who nodded politely and said, "They're expecting you." She saw two people seated there. A man in his early 60s with sharp features and steel-gray hair, and a woman in her 40s, statuesque and dressed in a tailored navy suit. Parker, the man greeted, standing to extend a handshake. "I'm James Caldwell, a senior board member at Parker Grant. This is Donna Morrison, our general counsel." Michelle felt her pulse spike. The upper echelon of Adrian's company was here face to face. Donna offered a measured smile. "Thank you for meeting us. We're aware of the situation with Adrian, at least partially. We wanted to see if we could come to an arrangement that avoids further public scandal." Michelle's throat went dry. She sipped her water, trying to maintain composure. "What do you propose?" James leaned forward, tenting his fingers. "We need to protect the company's reputation. Adrian Parker has been a strong driver of growth, but we're concerned about his recent personal conduct. The board is preparing a strategy to remove him if he doesn't comply with our demands. Demands that include ceasing any inappropriate use of company funds. We've done some digging ourselves and found enough red flags to warrant an internal audit. But we'd like your cooperation." "Cooperation?" Michelle asked, trying to mask her skepticism. Donna nodded. "We'd like you to share any documents or evidence you have. In exchange, we'll ensure you receive a fair settlement from Adrian. The board can exert pressure on him to finalize the divorce terms advantageously for you. Additionally, we can offer you financial protection, an escrow account in your name, while the dust settles." It was an unexpected lifeline, one that felt almost too good to be true. "Why are you willing to help me?" Michelle asked, voice wary. James's expression softened. "Mrs. Parker, you're carrying Adrian's child. Any scandal that drags you through the mud will reflect badly on Parker Grant. Also, believe it or not, some of us still hold on to a sense of decency. We don't want to see you destroyed by Adrian's irresponsibility." Michelle mulled it over her mind, darting between possible traps. She couldn't deny that an alliance with the board might protect her in ways she couldn't manage alone. If Parker Grant turned on Adrian, he'd lose a powerful pillar of support. "All right," she finally said. "I'm willing to cooperate. But I want to make sure I come out of this with the means to support my baby. I also want to ensure that Adrian is held accountable for his actions." Donna slid a business card across the table. "Understood. Contact me directly with the documents. We'll handle the rest. Of course, we'd appreciate your discretion." The meeting concluded with polite nods. Michelle felt a strange sense of relief, but also fear. She was stepping deeper into a corporate chess game. One wrong move, and she could lose everything. A week passed, and Michelle complied with the board's request. She forwarded sanitized versions of Charles's documentation to Donna Morrison. Parker Grant's internal audit team got to work immediately, quietly verifying the details. Charles, still in hiding, confirmed that he would speak to them if necessary, but only under legal protection. In the meantime, Adrian made one last, desperate move. He showed up at Kelly's apartment, unannounced. Michelle was napping when she heard frantic knocking on the door. She opened it to find her estranged husband, looking disheveled and furious. "What are you doing here?" she demanded, protective instincts flaring. He barged in, ignoring her question. "So this is how it's going to be." He waved some folded papers in her face. "I got wind of your meeting with the board. You're siding with them." She stepped back, trembling but resolute. "I'm siding with what's right," she said, her voice nearly breaking. "You cheated on me, Adrian. You took money from the company. You left me pregnant with nowhere to go." He flung the papers onto the coffee table. They were copies of the internal audit's preliminary findings. "You think you're so righteous. You want to tear me down. You don't realize that if Parker Grant goes under, you'll be left with nothing. The board will wash their hands of you." Michelle's eyes welled with tears, but she refused to back down. "They've given me their word," she said, voice unsteady. "They'll protect me and my child, something you failed to do." Adrian stared at her belly bitterness, twisting his features. "You still think I'm the villain here?" he asked, hands shaking. "I wanted a different life, Michelle. But you forced me into this." A wave of anger surged in her. "Stop blaming me for your choices," she shouted. "I never forced you to have an affair. I never forced you to embezzle funds. You did that. You ruined our family." In that moment, he looked at her, with a flash of something akin to regret. But it disappeared as soon as it appeared. Without another word, he stormed out. Kelly came rushing out of her bedroom, alarmed. Michelle, trembling, sank onto the couch. "He's desperate now," she whispered. "Who knows what he'll do?" 2 days later, the board convened a secret session. They invited both Michelle and Adrian. Donna Morrison had orchestrated it carefully. It took place in a private conference suite at the Ritz-Carlton, St. Louis, a neutral, discreet location. The suite boasted soundproof walls and heavy doors that guaranteed privacy. Michelle arrived with Lisa Green, and to her surprise found the entire Parker Grant board present: James Caldwell, a few other directors, and an external forensic accountant. Adrian was already there, accompanied by a high-powered attorney, and his mistress, the same brunette from the scandalous photos, seated quietly in the back, eyes scanning the room nervously. Michelle felt a pang of envy at the woman's perfect poise, but she reminded herself this was about the baby, not jealousy. James Caldwell spoke first. "We're here to discuss serious allegations. Our audit indicates that you, Mr. Parker, misappropriated company funds for personal use. Additionally, your actions have placed the firm's stability at risk. Our investors and clients could suffer irreparable harm if this becomes public. We demand accountability." Adrian's attorney sprang to his feet, disclaimers at the ready, but Adrian waved him down. He looked exhausted, older than his 36 years. "I'll pay back what I took," he said, voice lacking conviction. "We can settle this internally. There's no need for legal charges." His eyes flickered to Michelle, a mix of anger and pleading. "Let's just handle this quietly." Donna Morrison glanced at Michelle, then said, "Before we decide on how to proceed, there's the matter of your marital dispute, Mr. Parker. Michelle has evidence of your wrongdoing. The board has reviewed it. Our recommendation is for you to finalize a divorce settlement that adequately provides for your child. Immediately." Adrian's jaw clenched. He stole another glance at his mistress, who looked distinctly uneasy. "Fine," he spat. How much Michelle bristled at his callous tone. She hadn't come here to haggle like it was a flea market. Lisa Green calmly slid a settlement proposal across the table. Adrian's attorney scanned it, eyes widening. Then Adrian snatched the document from him, quickly flipping through the pages. "This is absurd," Adrian growled. "She gets the lake house spousal support for years. Joint custody with a guaranteed monthly stipend." Michelle steadied herself. "It's for the baby's future," she replied. "You have more than enough, Adrian. Don't pretend you can't afford it." A tense silence hung in the air. James Caldwell cleared his throat. "Mr. Parker, if you refuse, we'll proceed with legal charges. You'll likely lose everything anyway, including your ability to hold any future executive position. We can't risk the reputation of Parker Grant by allowing your misconduct to continue." Adrian glared at each board member in turn, then at Michelle. Finally, he slumped in his seat. "All right," he muttered, signing the document with a flourish of anger. "You win." A surge of relief coursed through Michelle. Yet strangely, part of her felt hollow. This was the father of her child, reduced to a cornered man forced to sign away his marriage. Could there have been a time when they might have saved their love? She pushed the thought away. That time, if it ever existed, had long passed. Adrian's attorney gathered the papers looking like a man who'd just lost a high-stakes poker game. James Caldwell nodded gravely, signifying the meeting's end. The board swiftly exited, leaving Adrian, his mistress, Michelle, and their respective attorneys. Michelle turned to leave, but Adrian unexpectedly grabbed her arm gently this time. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said, voice raw. "Just know I'm sorry." His eyes flicked to her belly, then darted away. She swallowed hard. There was nothing left to say. In the days that followed, an official announcement declared Adrian Parker would be stepping down from Parker Grant Holdings to pursue personal ventures. No public mention was made of his indiscretions, and the board quietly reassured major investors that the company remained secure. In exchange for Michelle's silence, she received a substantial settlement and sole ownership of the lake house, a peaceful retreat she'd once fallen in love with during a romantic weekend with Adrian. It felt both ironic and bittersweet to now claim it as part of her fresh start. Michelle moved into the lake house about an hour's drive from St. Louis, nestled near shimmering waters and tall pines. The moment she stepped inside, she felt a wave of memories, some happy, some tragic, wash over her. She cried, allowed herself a final grief for the marriage she had lost, and then set to work making the place her own. Kelly helped decorate the nursery, choosing pastel tones and gentle themes. Michelle enrolled in a local prenatal class, forging new friendships with expectant mothers who had no clue about her tumultuous past. She kept in touch with Charles Reynolds, who informed her that the board had offered him a quiet severance package. He was moving to Denver for a new start. "Thank you for believing me," he told Michelle in their final conversation. "I hope you find peace now." One crisp autumn afternoon, Michelle stood on the lake house's deck, wrapped in a sweater cradling her growing belly. The wind rustled the leaves, painting the water in shades of gold and crimson. In the distance, she noticed a figure approaching. Her heart skipped. It was Adrian. He must have followed her address from the divorce papers. She couldn't pretend she was happy to see him, but she didn't feel the same fury she once had. He stopped a few steps away, hands in his coat pockets. "Hey," he said softly. "Hey," she replied, trying to steady her nerves. He looked thinner, wearier. "I won't stay long," Adrian added. I wanted to see if you're okay." She pressed a protective hand over her belly. "I'm managing." After a moment, she asked, "How's your, new life?" He shrugged, forcing a hollow laugh. "Not as glamorous as you might think. The board froze me out of everything. My relationship didn't last. Turns out she was in it for the money." Silence stretched between them. Finally, he glanced at the lake eyes, distant. "Michelle, if you ever need anything, for the baby, I'll be here." In that moment, she saw a glimmer of the old Adrian, the one she fell in love with at the snack table years ago. But the pain he'd caused her was too deep to brush aside. "Thank you," she said, mustering the barest civility. "But let's keep communication to what's necessary for our child." He nodded, understanding. "I'm sorry," he murmured again, then turned and walked away. Michelle watched him leave, tears stinging her eyes. Tears of finality, acceptance, and the faintest hope for a better future. Months later, Michelle gave birth to a baby boy, Ethan Harris Parker, in a small but welcoming local hospital. Kelly was with her in the delivery room, holding her hand as she labored. The moment Ethan let out his first wail, Michelle experienced an overwhelming flood of love she never imagined possible. She had survived betrayal, heartbreak, and corporate deception to arrive at this sacred moment of life. Adrian visited a week after Ethan's birth, bringing flowers and a hand-knitted baby blanket, likely from a store, but she appreciated the gesture anyway. He looked awkward, unsure how to hold the baby. Michelle guided his arms and he gently cradled Ethan, his eyes brimming with emotions he struggled to express. For a split second, Michelle saw regret flash across his features again. Days turned into weeks, and Ethan became Michelle's entire world. She established a home office, leveraging her marketing expertise to start her own consulting firm, catering to small businesses and non-profits. Word spread quickly about her integrity and passion, and soon she was taking calls from clients in Chicago, Atlanta, even overseas. She was determined to raise Ethan with a balance of financial stability and moral grounding, the very values she believed in, far from the illusions of wealth that had once ensnared her and Adrian. Adrian wrote monthly checks for child support, never missing a payment. So what? He remained at arm's length, visiting Ethan on scheduled weekends, playing the role of a well-meaning but distant father. Michelle recognized that while Ethan deserved to know his father, she had to protect them both from the emotional volatility Adrian still harbored. Over time, Adrian's visits became more regular, and though Michelle never fully let her guard down, she appreciated that he seemed to genuinely care about their son. Ethan's first birthday arrived on a sunny spring afternoon. Michelle hosted a small gathering at the lake house, inviting friends like Kelly, a few neighbors, and some of her new mum friends from the prenatal classes. A modest balloon arch framed the porch, and a homemade cake awaited the birthday boy's messy delight. To Michelle's surprise, Adrian showed up alone, his hands filled with wrapped presents. He offered a stiff smile and a nod, staying mainly on the periphery of the festivities. When it came time for Ethan to attempt his first taste of cake, Adrian joined Michelle by their son's high chair, snapping pictures with his phone, like any proud father. For a moment, the three of them formed a fragile tableau. A mother, a father, and a laughing, frosting-smeared toddler, caught in an unspoken hope that maybe, just maybe, they could navigate a future where heartbreak no longer defined them. After the guests left, and Kelly had helped clean up, Adrian lingered. He strolled out to the deck where Michelle was taking a final look at the leftover decorations. The water gleamed under the setting sun, painting the sky in hues of pink and orange. "This place is beautiful," Adrian remarked, his voice subdued. "I can see why you love it here." She nodded, arms folded. "It's peaceful. Ethan can grow up away from all that chaos." He sighed. "I understand. I'm glad you're both doing well." In the silence that followed, Michelle realized she felt no anger now, just a faint ache for what could have been. Still, the decision had been made, and she had chosen her dignity and Ethan's well-being over illusions of a fairy tale marriage. "We're all trying to heal in our own ways," she said at last. Adrian gently placed a hand on her shoulder, just a momentary, tentative connection. "Thank you for letting me be a part of his life," he said, voice tight with genuine emotion. Then he left his footsteps, softly fading as he walked away. Years passed, but the lessons never faded. Michelle Parker, once known only as the wife of Adrian Parker, had redefined her identity. No longer tethered to the illusions of wealth or the trauma of betrayal, she stood as a beacon of quiet strength, a mother, a businesswoman, and a survivor of one of the most difficult periods in her life. Her consulting firm, Parker & Hart Strategies, had grown well beyond her initial expectations. She now employed a small team of passionate professionals who shared her mission to help nonprofits and small businesses tell authentic stories and reach real people. Her clientele stretched across the country, and Michelle found joy not in boardrooms or gala halls, but in the everyday wins, helping a women's shelter double its donations, guiding a local cafe to build an online presence, mentoring interns who reminded her of herself a decade ago. But her greatest joy remained her son, Ethan. Ethan was now a bright, curious toddler, with Adrian's piercing eyes, but Michelle's quiet strength. He loved puzzles, adored animals, and had an odd habit of falling asleep during car rides, no matter the distance. Michelle took him everywhere from weekend markets to beachside road trips. Every time he giggled or wrapped his little arms around her neck, she felt a kind of love that eclipsed anything she'd known before. It was not rooted in promises or wealth, it was pure, unconditional. Adrian, for his part, had become a subdued figure in their lives. Their co-parenting arrangement, while not warm, was functional. He never missed a scheduled visit and kept his financial commitments without question. The scandal had forced him into exile from the business world, but Michelle suspected that deep down he understood the gravity of what he'd lost, not just a career, but the chance at a true partnership, a real family. Still, she bore him no hatred anymore. Time had dulled the blade of her wounds. What remained was a scar, a reminder, but not a prison. One afternoon, as she rocked Ethan to sleep in the nursery, they'd painted soft green. Michelle thought about how different life looked from what she once envisioned. She used to dream of limousines and gala nights, designer shoes and luxury travel. Now she craved slow mornings, the smell of pancakes on the stove, the soft sound of Ethan breathing on her shoulder. And she had built it all herself. Kelly remained her closest confidant, a sister in every way, except by blood. The two often laughed about the early days when Michelle was sleeping in her car, uncertain if she would even survive the heartbreak. Kelly had moved in with her boyfriend, now fiancé, and the two couples often met for dinners. Kelly's unwavering support had been a lifeline, and Michelle knew that she would never forget the hand that reached for her when she was at her lowest. Occasionally, Michelle would receive a letter from Charles Reynolds, now living a quiet life in Colorado. He always asked about Ethan, always signed off with encouragement and praise. "You chose integrity over convenience," he once wrote. That's rare. That's powerful. On the 3rd anniversary of Ethan's birth, Michelle stood by the lake just after sunrise. The wind kissed her face and the sun filtered through the trees, casting long golden streaks over the water. She watched Ethan play with a stick near the shore, giggling at the ducks paddling past. In that tranquil moment, she realized something simple but profound. She had made it. Not just survived, but grown, rebuilt, flourished. Her life was not defined by the man who once broke her heart, nor by the house she had fled, or the scandals that briefly gripped her world. Her life was her own now, every moment of laughter, every small victory, every lesson hard won. And more than anything, it was defined by the love between a mother and her child. Later that evening, as she tucked Ethan into bed, he looked up at her with sleepy eyes and whispered, "You're my favorite person." Tears welled in Michelle's eyes, and she kissed his forehead. "And you, my little one, are my entire world." She turned off the lights and stepped into the hallway, her heart full. In the silence of the house, she opened her laptop to respond to a client's email. But before she typed a single word, she looked out the window toward the lake and whispered to herself, "This is just the beginning," because endings, Michelle had learned, are not final. Sometimes they are the doorway to a life more beautiful than you ever imagined. Thank you for joining me on Michelle Parker's journey from a heartbroken wife sleeping in her car to a resilient mother forging a better life for her child. Her story reminds us that no amount of wealth can replace genuine love, integrity, and inner strength. Sometimes life hands us betrayals that shatter our dreams, but as Michelle discovered, every heartbreak can open a door to a stronger, more honest future. If you found this story inspiring, please give this video a thumbs up and share it with someone who might need hope in tough times. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Your support helps us continue bringing you these powerful real-life drama stories. Thank you for watching, and remember, when one door closes, another door opens to new possibilities. He was the dashing mogul every ambitious entrepreneur wanted to emulate. She was the poised, loyal wife who had stood by him from humble beginnings. No one would have guessed that behind the gated mansion's manicured lawns, betrayal festered like poison. Until one day, in a flurry of financial sabotage, he let his mistress cut off his wife's credit cards. It was humiliating, scandalous, and only the beginning of a whirlwind that would pit powerful business alliances against each other. In a boardroom confrontation that stunned everyone, the CEO himself stepped in, but not in the way anyone expected. Buckle up. This is the story of love, greed, and revenge. Jordan Alberts was not born into luxury. He grew up in a cramped one-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of Milwaukee, where he learned to hustle by selling candy bars door to door at the age of 10. Over the years, Jordan's unwavering determination and charm propelled him into better circles. First at a local startup, then into his own tech company that caught the eye of an angel investor. By the time he was 35, Jordan was a self-made millionaire, a prominent figure on various entrepreneurial boards, and had connections with people like Mark Cuban, Bill Gates, and a few top executives at Google. His wife, Elizabeth Alberts née Wagner, had been with him through everything. They met in college at a small tech entrepreneur club meeting, both bright-eyed and dreaming of changing the world. Elizabeth came from a modest background, too. Her father was a retired auto mechanic, and her mother a homemaker. She'd studied communications with an emphasis on public relations, and it was through Elizabeth's network of contacts that Jordan first gained access to small local pitch events. While Jordan pitched his innovative software for automating small business tasks, Elizabeth made calls, arranged coffee meetups, and tried to capture the interest of potential backers. They married in a little chapel by Lake Michigan. It wasn't a lavish wedding, no star-studded guest list, no fancy reception at the Ritz. But to Jordan and Elizabeth, it felt perfect. A union built on genuine love, unwavering support, and a shared dream of building a life and a business empire together. Over the next decade, they grew from a modest condominium in Milwaukee to a stunning estate in Austin near Lake Travis, with a sweeping view of the water and rolling Texas hills. It was there at a philanthropic event organized by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation that Jordan's name landed on the radar of top-level investors. His company's smart automation technology was recognized for its potential to transform not just small businesses, but large-scale manufacturing and logistics. Soon after, Jordan's net worth skyrocketed from a mere $5 million to well over $200 million. For a while, everything was picture perfect. The marriage was strong, their personal synergy unwavering. Elizabeth handled some philanthropic duties, organizing events, acting as a goodwill ambassador for Jordan's brand, and forging new partnerships through her PR background. Their household staff adored them, describing Elizabeth as kind, gracious, and always mindful of the people around her. But money can be a seductive force, and success can open doors to darker temptations. Jordan began attending more exclusive networking events in Beverly Hills, New York, and beyond. Elizabeth was often at his side, but there were times she couldn't attend. Perhaps she was busy finalizing the details for a charity gala, or maybe she was simply burnt out from the unrelenting schedule. It was during these times, rare at first, then increasingly common, that Jordan got close to someone else. Her name was Ava Monroe. She was a rising star in the world of technology law, representing high-profile clients like Tesla, Amazon, and a few top-tier cryptocurrency exchanges. She had a reputation for being ruthless in negotiations, seductive in social gatherings, and unbelievably charming behind closed doors. The rumor mill started buzzing the moment Ava was seen at Jordan's table during a private dinner after a tech summit in Las Vegas. Elizabeth wasn't there. She had chosen to stay in Austin, meeting with a team of female entrepreneurs Jordan was mentoring. A few people whispered about Jordan's visible fascination with Ava, the way he leaned in whenever she spoke, how they clinked champagne flutes with an intimacy that suggested more than just business talk. No one knew for certain how fast or how deep it went, but soon the signs became undeniable. Lavish gifts appeared on Ava's social media, including a diamond bracelet, suspiciously similar to the ones Jordan's company had once gifted important clients. Photos emerged of Jordan and Ava at high-end restaurants in Manhattan, always carefully angled to obscure Jordan's face, though keen observers could still identify him by the sliver of a recognizable watch or the faint reflection in a mirrored wall. By the time the rumors reached Elizabeth, they were no longer rumors, but near-confirmed facts. She felt her chest tighten, her world spinning out of control. This couldn't be real. Jordan had always been a loyal partner. But the evidence was too compelling to deny. She confronted him in the privacy of their Lakeview mansion. At first, Jordan denied everything. Yet denial quickly turned into a half-hearted admission once Elizabeth presented him with photographic evidence. Like a skilled negotiator used to controlling deals, Jordan tried to manipulate the situation, insisting that Ava was just a business associate, someone he occasionally had dinner with. But Elizabeth saw right through it. She had always been adept at reading him. A chill settled over their once loving home. Elizabeth, determined to preserve her dignity, demanded they enter marriage counseling, or at the very least step away from high-profile events until they resolved their issues in private. Jordan nodded, providing non-committal answers. He had never liked therapy, never seen the point in discussing feelings with a stranger. He agreed to her wishes on the surface, yet beneath the facade, he continued his involvement with Ava, allowing the illicit relationship to take root. This was the calm before the storm. For soon Elizabeth's sense of betrayal would pale in comparison to the massive financial and emotional blow about to come her way. Weeks passed. Elizabeth tried to focus on her philanthropic work and personal projects, attempting to distract herself from the growing chasm between her and Jordan. When a local charity she sponsored invited her to discuss future donations, Elizabeth discovered something shocking. Her personal credit card was declined. Embarrassment washed over her in front of the unsuspecting staff. She tried another card. Sure, it must have been a glitch, but that too was declined. The staff politely suggested she call her bank, and Elizabeth excused herself with a polite smile, her hands trembling as she left the office. Elizabeth called the bank suspecting fraud or an administrative error. But the bank's representative informed her that both cards had been cancelled the previous week. Under their joint account, they were tied to Jordan's finances, and evidently Jordan had authorized the cancellation. It felt like a punch to the gut. Why on earth would Jordan cancel her cards without her knowledge or consent? They had never had major financial disputes. Elizabeth always had access to family funds, albeit responsibly. She dialed Jordan, but the call went straight to voicemail. She sent him several frantic texts. No response. Later that evening, Jordan came home exuding an air of tired disinterest. Elizabeth confronted him the moment he walked through the door. Under the chandelier's glow, which reflected in her tear-filled eyes, Jordan brushed aside her questions with a dismissive wave. "I needed to consolidate our finances," he said, removing his blazer. "You can use the joint checking account for a while." "No big deal, no big deal." Elizabeth's frustration swelled. "You cancelled my credit cards without even telling me what's going on. Are you punishing me for something?" Jordan's eyes flicked away nervously, and that was when Elizabeth realized he was lying again. The next words that came from his mouth were not only shocking, but also laced with a cruelty she never imagined he was capable of. "Ava suggested we revisit some of my expenses. She found that you were spending frivolously. It made sense to limit credit usage." Elizabeth's heart dropped to her stomach. Ava. That woman was now meddling in their finances. As if the affair wasn't enough, Jordan had allowed this mistress to encroach into an arena that Elizabeth believed was sacred, her own household stability. "What is Ava doing reviewing my spending? Since when does your fling get to decide what is or isn't frivolous?" Elizabeth spat tears, threatening to spill. Jordan made an attempt at a calming gesture, but his words only fanned the flames. "She's helping me restructure. Her firm has great insights into corporate finances. "This is about the business, Elizabeth. It's not personal." Not personal. Elizabeth recalled how intimately personal their marriage had always been. They built every aspect of their lives together, from small decisions about wallpaper colors to big entrepreneurial leaps that demanded everything from both of them. Now Jordan was shutting her out, consulting Ava instead. In a quavering voice, Elizabeth demanded, "Reinstate my cards. I am your wife. I have a right to our finances, and you know I've never been irresponsible with money." Jordan's face hardened with a new arrogance. "Not until we finalize our restructure," he said, referring to some nebulous plan Elizabeth knew little about. "I'll handle everything in the meantime." That moment, that cold exchange, was a harbinger of the bigger heartbreak to come. If Jordan was letting Ava control such details, what other aspects of their marriage was he willing to let her sabotage? As the days turned into weeks, Elizabeth discovered one more blow after another. The monthly allowance she used to cover household expenses had been slashed without explanation. The staff, including her personal assistant, was laid off. Bills began piling up, addressed to her name, but with no means to pay them aside from groveling at Jordan's feet. Friends and family started to notice. Elizabeth tried to hide her shame. She confided in her sister Caroline, who was enraged at Jordan. "This is financial abuse," Caroline insisted. "You should speak to a lawyer." Elizabeth shuddered at the thought. She still believed they could salvage their relationship, that Jordan would snap out of whatever daze Ava had put him in. Yet a small part of her whispered that maybe Caroline was right. Then came a fateful meeting at a hotel conference suite in Los Angeles, one that Jordan had insisted Elizabeth attend. It was a gathering of major tech moguls, including Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, who were rumored to be there to discuss new tech innovations in global logistics. When Elizabeth arrived, she quickly realized something was off. She saw Jordan in the lounge area, standing far too close to Ava, exchanging hushed conversations. Seeing Elizabeth from a distance, Jordan slipped away discreetly, leaving Ava behind. Elizabeth approached her husband with a forced smile. "I'm here," she said, desperate to maintain composure. "What's the plan?" Jordan gave a curt nod. "There's a closed-door session for the key players only. You'll have to wait outside." In the past, Elizabeth had always been included in these key player sessions as Jordan's partner and PR advisor. The subtle exclusion burned her pride. She swallowed her anger. "Sure, I can wait." After hours of waiting, she found Jordan and Ava laughing together near the bar. As she approached, Jordan's phone buzzed, and he stepped away. That was when Ava turned a chilling smirk on her face. "You know Jordan's a visionary," Ava said, swirling the wine in her glass. "He needs someone who can keep up with him on all levels: business, ambition, excitement." Elizabeth felt her face flush with anger. "I've been by his side for years. We built this together." Ava gave a theatrical shrug. "Maybe in the past. But times change. People evolve. I guess you were too comfortable." Elizabeth clenched her fists, biting back a retort. She was determined not to make a scene in front of such influential people. But oh, how she wanted to lash out, to expose Ava for the home wrecker she was. Ava flicked her hair behind her shoulder, noticing Elizabeth's agitation. "Things will be better if you accept it," she cooed, as if offering advice to a friend. Jordan's moved on in more ways than one. The finances are just the beginning. Elizabeth's body went cold. She realized in that moment how truly precarious her situation was. Ava was not simply a fling. She was positioning herself as a partner in Jordan's professional and personal life. The credit cards were just one step in what looked like a systematic campaign to push Elizabeth out of everything she and Jordan had built. Still, Elizabeth refused to crumble. She left the event quietly, but her mind churned with rage and heartbreak. It was time for her to take action. She needed to protect herself, her assets, and her dignity. Little did she know that as she plotted her next move, Jordan and Ava were preparing a financial ambush that would push her to the brink. Only fate and an unexpected intervention by a certain CEO would alter the course of their twisted game. In the days after the Los Angeles conference, Elizabeth attempted to consult with attorneys. She picked up a referral from a friend who once worked with a high-profile divorce lawyer in New York. The initial phone calls were sobering, with Jordan's empire being primarily under his name and her credit cards cancelled. She had limited liquidity to hire top-tier representation. Even so, Elizabeth pressed forward. She managed to scrape together some funds from a personal savings account. Jordan had no access to money she had set aside from her early PR consulting days. It wasn't a large sum, but enough to secure a preliminary consultation. During that consultation, her lawyer, Michelle Liu, a bright and empathetic but hard-hitting attorney based in Houston, laid out the hard truth. Financial abuse and infidelity are serious grounds for divorce, Michelle said, scanning through Elizabeth's financial statements. But if Jordan's funneling money and assets into new accounts under his own name, or shifting resources to places you can't see, we need proof, and we need it fast. Elizabeth swallowed. She recounted Ava's involvement, how she was effectively orchestrating the restructuring. Michelle's pen scribbled quickly over a notepad. You have a right to half of the marital assets, Elizabeth, but it looks like your husband is 2 steps ahead. We must move quickly. The plan was to gather evidence of Jordan's wrongdoing and file a court order to freeze marital assets, ensuring Elizabeth had a fair shot. But as they began drafting documents and rummaging through what records, Elizabeth had an avalanche of shocking details surfaced. Jordan wasn't merely cancelling credit cards. He was transferring stocks from their joint portfolio into an account under his newly formed trust. He had changed the authorized signatory details for a few of their properties, effectively locking Elizabeth out. He was also taking out lines of credit against certain properties, presumably to fund new ventures that, as Elizabeth suspected, involved Ava. The emotional strain weighed heavily on Elizabeth. She couldn't sleep, her appetite waned. Each day felt like standing at the center of a storm. Yet if she thought this was the worst of it, she was mistaken. One evening, after finalizing some documents with Michelle, Elizabeth returned to her mansion to find her key card didn't work on the electronic locks. Pounding on the door, she shouted for the live-in staff if any were left. Seconds later, the door opened slightly, revealing Ava's face. "Jordan's not here," Ava said icily. "You should call next time." Elizabeth's heart hammered. "This is my home. Get out of my way," she demanded, trying to push past. But Ava slid in front of her, refusing to budge. "He told me you're not welcome here anymore until the legal mess is settled," Ava sneered. "I have every right to ask you to leave." Elizabeth was trembling with fury. "You have no rights here. You're the mistress, not the wife." With a cold laugh, Ava stepped aside and pointed at Elizabeth's luggage haphazardly placed in the foyer. "Jordan left these for you," she said. "He said to pack whatever else you need and let security escort you out if you refuse to leave." Elizabeth blinked away tears, her throat raw with outrage. She was being thrown out of her own home by the woman who had intruded into her marriage. That moment was a cruel epiphany. Jordan had not only cut off her finances, but now he was physically pushing her out of the place she had shared with him for years. Yet in all that darkness, A sliver of light emerged the next morning. Elizabeth received a phone call from a close mutual friend, Marcus O'Donnell, who worked with Jordan at a large tech conglomerate in Dallas. Marcus was someone Elizabeth trusted, an executive who had known Jordan since the early days. He had seen them build the company from the ground up. Elizabeth Marcus said, his tone urgent. "I don't know everything that's going on, but I heard from your staff that you've been locked out. There's a board meeting next week. Jordan wants to finalize some big decisions. If you can get to that meeting and talk to the chairman, maybe you can find some leverage." Elizabeth's breath caught in her chest. The chairman of this particular conglomerate was none other than famed CEO David Hartridge, known not just for his visionary leadership, but also for a strict code of ethics. Over the years, Hartridge had invested heavily in Jordan's business. He was the reason Jordan sat on that board. "He's not the type to meddle in personal affairs," Marcus warned. "But if Jordan's pulling stunts that compromise your share in the company, Hartridge might step in. He's big on fairness and hates scandal." It was the glimmer of hope Elizabeth needed. She thanked Marcus profusely. The plan was simple: attend the board meeting, confront Jordan in front of Hartridge, and present enough evidence of Jordan's wrongdoing to ensure the board and possibly the entire conglomerate would not stand for it. She spent the week gathering documents, bank statements, and text message screenshots that implicated Jordan in unscrupulous financial moves. Michelle Liu helped compile everything into a neat folder. "You need to be prepared for Jordan to lash out," Michelle warned. "He'll try to discredit you in front of the board." Elizabeth nodded her determination, overshadowing her fear. She practiced her speech, reciting it in the mirror of her modest hotel room, where she had temporarily moved. Heart pounding, she told herself that if there was ever a time to fight, it was now. Finally, the day of the board meeting arrived. Elizabeth dressed in a sleek black pantsuit that radiated confidence. She walked into the corporate skyscraper in downtown Dallas, her chin held high despite the knot in her stomach. She spotted Jordan in the corridor, flanked by Ava and a couple of the board members. As soon as he saw Elizabeth, his expression darkened. "You're not supposed to be here," Jordan said, trying to keep his voice low. Elizabeth raised her chin. "I'm still an investor in your company. I hold shares. So yes, I'm attending the board meeting." Ava stepped in with a condescending smile. "Don't make a scene, Elizabeth. This meeting is for serious stakeholders." "I am a serious stakeholder," Elizabeth retorted, voice steady. "I'm your wife, still legally, and I'm half of this empire's foundation." Behind them, a tall figure approached CEO David Hartridge himself, a man in his 50s with graying temples and a firm handshake. He regarded Elizabeth with polite curiosity. "Ms. Alberts, I presume?" Elizabeth nodded, handing over her invitation papers and a letter from her attorney, which stated that she possessed partial shares. Hartridge studied the documents, then gave a curt nod indicating she was allowed to attend. Jordan shot Elizabeth a glare that spoke volumes. You have no idea what you're getting into. But Elizabeth did. She was here to preserve her dignity, her livelihood, and the legacy she had helped build. The meeting commenced in a sleek conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Dallas skyline. The board members sat around a large mahogany table, exchanging pleasantries about the upcoming quarter's projections. Jordan made a short presentation on a new partnership with a logistics firm, highlighting expansions and new contracts. A few board members clapped. Then came time for open discussion. Elizabeth raised her hand, clearing her throat. "I'd like to address some concerns about the financial structuring Jordan is proposing," she began, her voice reverberating across the silent room. Jordan's face reddened. Ava, seated beside him, tried to intervene. "We should keep personal matters out of board discussions," she said. But Elizabeth pressed on, raising the folder of evidence. "These changes aren't just personal," Elizabeth said. "They could affect company stability. Jordan is funneling resources into a new trust, making questionable decisions without transparency. I have documents signed by him with references to Ms. Ava Monroe demonstrating a conflict of interest that could potentially compromise investor trust." A hush fell over the room. Hartridge's brow creased. "Jordan, is this true?" Jordan stood, scrambling for composure. "This is a personal matter. Elizabeth is overstepping her bounds." "She's not," Hartridge replied, his voice sharp. "If there's a conflict of interest that threatens the stability of our partnership, it's very much a board matter." Jordan's eyes darted between Hartridge and Elizabeth. For the first time, he seemed cornered, uncertain how to proceed. Ava shot Elizabeth a lethal glare, realizing that Elizabeth's boldness had forced the topic into official territory. The tension was palpable. Elizabeth's heart thumped so loudly, she was certain everyone could hear it. But she stood her ground. Continuing. "I also discovered lines of credit being taken against marital properties to fund expansions. These expansions could be legitimate, but the details are obscured. I have reason to believe Ms. Monroe is manipulating these finances for her personal gain." Murmurs rippled through the board. A couple members exchanged uneasy glances. Even those who might have sided with Jordan seemed rattled by the magnitude of Elizabeth's accusations. Hartridge steepled his fingers, evaluating the situation. "I propose we recess for 15 minutes. Jordan, Elizabeth, Ms. Monroe, please step into my office." Jordan inhaled, frustration etched across his features. But he couldn't refuse the CEO's request, not without causing a catastrophic scene. The three followed Hartridge into a glass-walled corner office, shutting the door behind them. In that tense, enclosed space, the real battle began. Elizabeth laid out her evidence on the polished table before Hartridge. Jordan tried to dismiss it all as a personal dispute, but Hartridge was no fool. He could see the potential for scandal, especially if a partner was using company infrastructure for personal vendettas. Throughout this heated exchange, Ava attempted to deflect blame. She portrayed herself as a legal advisor, merely suggesting financial moves, disclaiming any wrongdoing. But Elizabeth's carefully compiled documents suggested otherwise. Emails, text messages, and proposed legal documents bore Ava's digital fingerprints. Hartridge's expression darkened. "Jordan, this is unacceptable. If these documents are authentic, you've put your personal entanglements ahead of corporate responsibility. I won't allow it under my leadership." Jordan's face went pale. He tried to protest, to label Elizabeth's claims as overblown, but Hartridge had already made up his mind. "Until this is sorted out, Jordan, I'm placing your proposals on hold. We can't move forward with any major financial changes if they're under this sort of ethical cloud." Elizabeth felt a surge of relief, a faint vindication. While she hadn't resolved the core issue of Jordan's betrayal, at least the board wasn't letting him run roughshod over her financial future. But Jordan, cornered and embarrassed, lashed out in desperation. "You can't shut me down like this," he snapped at Hartridge, voice tight with anger. "I'm the one who made that original deal with your conglomerate. You need my innovation." Hartridge stood up, bristling at Jordan's tone. "I'm the CEO, and you've just made me question your reliability and integrity. Watch yourself, Jordan." Ava stepped closer to Jordan, placing a hand on his arm to calm him. but he shrugged her off. "You'll regret this," he warned Hartridge, then turned to Elizabeth. "And you made a fool of me in front of everyone." Elizabeth clenched her fists, refusing to cower. "You did that to yourself," she said, voice trembling with both fear and resolve. Jordan stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Ava followed quickly, her heels clicking on the marble floor. Hartridge sighed, looking at Elizabeth, who was holding back tears. "Thank you for bringing this to my attention," Hartridge said. "I'm sorry about your personal struggles, but I have to protect the board's interests. If you need anything, contact my office. I'm not a family court judge, but I won't let Jordan drag the company down." With that, Elizabeth let out a shaky breath. She had achieved a small but crucial victory, yet she couldn't shake the nagging sense that Jordan, humiliated and cornered, was far from finished. She left the skyscraper, stepping out into the bright Dallas sun, uncertain, but determined. Little did she know this chapter was only the start of a far more explosive confrontation, one that would involve security teams, sudden betrayals, and a twist that would bring Jordan himself to his knees. Life outside the mansion was lonely, but Elizabeth was thankful for the reprieve from Ava's manipulations. She rented a small apartment near downtown Austin and used what funds she had left to secure her basic needs, while Michelle continued to press for a financial freeze on Jordan's assets. In the weeks following the tense board meeting, Jordan went surprisingly quiet. No more legal letters arrived. No more credit lines were sabotaged. He didn't attempt to contact Elizabeth, nor did Ava. Instead, it seemed as though they had retreated into some silent fortress, likely strategizing their next move. Elizabeth took advantage of the lull. She reconnected with old friends and mentors, explaining partially at least what she was going through. While many were shocked, they offered support in the form of references, moral encouragement, and occasional leads for a stable job or a business partnership. Despite the heartbreak, Elizabeth discovered a renewed sense of purpose. She wasn't just a passive bystander in Jordan's world. She had her own capabilities, her own strengths. Slowly, she started consulting for small tech firms, using her communications and PR background to help them craft compelling pitches. It wasn't a fortune, but it was honest work that reminded her she could stand on her own 2 feet. Then one evening, she received a phone call from an unknown number. A crisp, professional voice greeted her. "Hello, Elizabeth. This is Patricia Carlson. I'm an executive assistant at Tesla, working under Elon Musk's leadership team." Elizabeth's heart thudded. She had met Patricia briefly at a tech conference in Berlin 2 years ago, but they'd never exchanged more than pleasantries. "How can I help you?" Elizabeth asked, mind racing. Patricia hesitated. "I might have information relevant to your predicament with Jordan. Let's just say some of our legal divisions have been observing Ava Monroe for a while, and some red flags have come up." Red flags. Elizabeth's curiosity flared. "You're investigating her?" A slow exhale from the other end. "Our major concern is that she's potentially engaged in insider trading, or at least something that veers close to it. She's been known to manipulate powerful men to gain inside info on deals, especially around new technologies. We don't have direct evidence, but we do know that she's heavily involved in your husband's finances. We suspect she might be siphoning resources for her own agendas." Elizabeth's mind reeled. This was bigger than a domestic spat. Ava might be leveraging Jordan's resources and connections to stake her own claims in the tech world. That explained the sudden shifts in finances, the new trust accounts, and the lines of credit. Patricia continued. "We want to bring her down, But we need more information. You, Elizabeth, might be in a unique position to gather that. Elizabeth tapped her fingers on the kitchen counter. Isn't that something your legal team handles? A rueful laugh. Yes, but we need Jordan's direct involvement. We suspect he's unwittingly giving her access to confidential materials through corporate crossovers or joint ventures. If you can help us prove it, we can kill two birds with one stone, protect Tesla's proprietary data, and help you gain leverage in your divorce. Elizabeth considered the offer. It was risky. If Ava was truly up to something illegal, Elizabeth could expose herself to potential backlash, but the lure of finally getting the upper hand was strong. I'll do what I can, Elizabeth replied cautiously. But how do I communicate with you about this? Patricia gave her a secure email address and instructions on how to encrypt files. And one more thing, Patricia said, before hanging up. People like Ava are cunning. She'll anticipate your every move. Don't trust phone lines or any device that Jordan has access to. Be careful. Elizabeth thanked her and ended the call. Adrenaline coursing through her. For the next few days, she scoured her digital archives for anything that might hint at insider information. Jordan's old emails messages about collaborations with major tech companies like Tesla or Amazon, documents that Ava might have manipulated anything that showed a trail of questionable activity. She found a few suspicious threads, forwarded emails from Jordan's corporate account that were CC'd to Ava's personal address. Attachments relating to Tesla's Project Next Gen battery were among them, though none of this was strictly proof of wrongdoing yet. Elizabeth compiled what she could and sent them to the secure email Patricia provided. In response, Patricia confirmed that these were valuable leads, but incomplete. Keep digging, she urged, and let me know if you get direct evidence of deals or monetary gains tied to these inside details. Meanwhile, Michelle Elizabeth's lawyer was preparing for a preliminary hearing to freeze some of Jordan's assets. She insisted Elizabeth come to court to testify about the financial abuse and the suspicious activities they had uncovered. But Jordan's side surprised them by agreeing to a partial freeze without argument. That's strange, Michelle said, tapping a pen against the conference table. Why would he agree so easily? Elizabeth shrugged, perplexed. Maybe he realizes fighting me will look bad in front of the board. But Michelle wasn't convinced. I suspect he's preparing a bigger move. Be vigilant. He may have more leverage than we know. The next morning, Elizabeth received an unsolicited text from Jordan. We need to talk, face to face. She felt a swirl of conflicting emotions, anger, sorrow, curiosity. But she knew she had to tread carefully. She agreed to meet him in a public place, a cafe near the courthouse, where she could keep the upper hand. When Jordan arrived, he looked tired, as though the weight of his troubles had worn him down. He offered a half smile, which Elizabeth did not return. Liz? He began using the old nickname he once uttered, with affection. Things got out of hand. She crossed her arms. You think? He sighed, scanning her face for warmth that was no longer there. I want to settle this amicably. We can discuss spousal support, property divisions, everything. No need for a long, nasty court battle. Elizabeth let the silence hover. She wasn't naive enough to believe him at face value. Amicably. Are you telling me Ava is out of the picture? Jordan's shoulders tensed. This is about you and me, not her. Look, maybe I got carried away with Ava's advice. She's a brilliant attorney. She's manipulative, Elizabeth cut in sharply. He brushed the point aside. Regardless, I'm willing to compromise. But I need you to lay off this insider trading nonsense. It's reckless. You're endangering my reputation." Elizabeth realized then that Jordan knew she'd been snooping into his communications. Perhaps Tesla's legal inquiries had begun reverberating in his circle. She saw the fear in his eyes. He was worried, if not about losing her, then about losing his empire. "You made me the enemy," Elizabeth replied, in a hushed, trembling tone. "When you let your mistress cut off my cards and throw me out of my home." Jordan looked away, shame flickering on his face. "I didn't handle that well. But you have to understand the pressure I'm under with these deals." She waited, letting him squirm. Then he continued, "You'll get a fair share. I promise. I just need you to stop meddling in my professional affairs, especially with Tesla or any other major collaborators. You'll ruin me if you do." A bitter laugh escaped Elizabeth. She thought of all the times she had stood beside him, protecting him, representing him before powerful players, forging alliances that were crucial to his success. Now he was pleading for her, not to ruin him. The irony nearly choked her. Before she could respond, Jordan's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and muttered a soft curse. "I have to go," he said, throwing some cash on the table for their untouched coffees. Elizabeth watched him leave a mixture of pity and disdain swirling in her stomach. It was obvious he was desperate, but was this a genuine attempt at reconciliation, or a ploy to keep her from uncovering more incriminating information about Ava? That question lingered as she returned to her apartment, drained. However, a new email from Patricia waited in her inbox. It contained an attachment, a partial timeline of suspicious trades linked to accounts rumored to be controlled by Ava Monroe. There were large bets placed on Tesla's stock ahead of public announcements. Gains in the tens of millions. This is huge, Elizabeth thought. If she connected these trades to emails or calls between Jordan and Ava, it could be the smoking gun. And while Elizabeth had no intention of going to the feds on her own, Tesla's legal team could bury Ava, and by extension, Jordan's complicity, if he was involved. Elizabeth clutched her phone, anxiety coursing through her. She was walking a razor's edge. One false step, and Jordan might retaliate more fiercely, or Ava might strike. But a successful strike against Ava could free Elizabeth from this entire ordeal, giving her the leverage to secure a fair divorce settlement, or even land Jordan in deeper trouble, depending on his role. She reached for her phone to text Patricia when it buzzed in her hand. A call from an unknown number again. Tentatively, Elizabeth answered. A man's voice greeted her calm and steady. "Hello, Ms. Alberts. My name is Gregory Shaw. I'm part of CEO David Hartridge's legal counsel. He asked me to follow up regarding the situation with your husband." Elizabeth's heart skipped. Hartridge's legal counsel. "We understand from Mr. Hartridge's conversation with you that there might be unethical or even illegal behavior in play," Gregory continued. "The board is concerned about potential liability if Jordan's personal dealings spill into our corporate structure. We can't risk another scandal. Mr. Hartridge would like to assist you discreetly." Elizabeth exhaled slowly. She was on the cusp of powerful alliances forming against Jordan and Ava, but the more people got involved, the more dangerous it felt. Gregory concluded, "We'll be in touch with your lawyer. If you have any crucial evidence, Mr. Hartridge suggests you keep it secure. He wants to avoid a public meltdown, but he's prepared to do what's necessary to protect the company's interests, and that includes supporting you in your legal disputes if it comes to that." Hanging up. Elizabeth felt a measure of validation. The cracks in Jordan's seemingly untouchable world were growing. Perhaps justice would prevail. Yet as she prepared to finalize the next round of documents for Michelle, a gnawing worry kept her awake at night. Cornered animals are the most dangerous, and Jordan, though once gentle and loving, had shown he could be ruthless when threatened. She braced herself for the storm that was surely coming. The next time Elizabeth saw Jordan in person, it wasn't by chance or a carefully arranged meeting. It was at the headquarters of Hartridge's conglomerate in Dallas. A sudden emergency board session had been called to address urgent corporate matters, and Elizabeth, having been notified by Gregory Shaw, arrived prepared. She walked into the reception area, her heart pounding with anticipation. Michelle Liu had insisted on accompanying her, but at the last minute she was called to handle a crucial filing. Elizabeth went alone, relying on the moral support from Gregory and the knowledge that Hartridge wanted the truth on record. Jordan was already inside the boardroom with Ava, who paced like a clad tiger. When Elizabeth entered, they both snapped their heads in her direction. Ava's glare could have sliced glass. Jordan's face was inscrutable, tense, angry, but also tinged with fear. Hartridge arrived moments later, trailed by a few board members and legal advisors. He wasted no time in stating the purpose of the meeting. Allegations have come to my attention that Ms. Monroe has been engaging in stock trades leveraging proprietary information from Jordan's company and potentially from our own collaborations. We need to clarify the truth. Now. Gasps and murmurs filled the room. Ava's jaw clenched. "This is preposterous," she began. "We demand to see your proof." Hartridge nodded to one of his advisors, who distributed printed documents, timelines of suspicious trades tied to accounts flagged by Tesla's legal team, along with correspondences that Elizabeth and Patricia had pieced together. Jordan snatched a packet from the advisor. His eyes swept over the page's color, draining from his face. Ava's lips thinned, and for a moment Elizabeth could see the faintest flicker of panic in her eyes. Hartridge pinned them with a stern gaze. "Jordan, you've been a valuable partner. I don't want to see your personal life derail your professional standing, but this is bigger than your marriage. Insider trading is a federal crime, and if Ms. Monroe is using your business resources to pull this off, you're implicated." Ava recovered quickly. She placed a hand on Jordan's arm, her voice smooth. "This is a misunderstanding, David. Anyone can align stock trades with corporate announcements. It's called speculation." Elizabeth decided enough was enough. She stood. "Speculation is one thing, but forwarding private emails, entire business proposals, and preliminary press releases is not speculation. I've seen the messages. You're literally discussing the best times to execute trades based on announcements that hadn't been made public yet." Ava whirled on Elizabeth. "You have no legal standing to claim that. You're just a scorned wife trying to sabotage Jordan and me." Elizabeth's blood boiled. "We'll let the evidence speak. There are even time-stamped emails from Jordan's corporate account sent to your personal email, Ms. Monroe, discussing upcoming expansions and product launches. Then trades were executed in your name or trusts linked to you within hours." A hush followed. Jordan's hands shook slightly. He seemed torn between denial and guilt. After all, the evidence was damning. If he denied it outright, he'd appear foolish. But if he admitted his involvement, he risked criminal charges and the wrath of the board. Hartridge leaned forward, his voice firm. "Jordan, I need answers. Were you aware of these trades?" Jordan stared at the table, words refusing to form. Finally, he managed, Ava said it was all above board. that it was just normal investing. Ava let out a short laugh, but it sounded hollow. If you want to scapegoat me, Jordan, think carefully, she warned. We made certain deals in your name as well. Your signatures are on plenty of documents. The entire boardroom seemed to hold its breath. Hartridge addressed one of his legal advisors. Have we sent this to the SEC? Not yet, the advisor responded. We wanted to confront them first. Jordan shot to his feet, panic etched on his face. No need to escalate it. We can handle this internally. If I undo the trades, repay any gains, repay tens of millions of dollars, Hartridge asked. And that would just be the tip of the iceberg if the SEC digs deeper. This is out of our hands if they launch a formal investigation. Elizabeth watched Jordan unravel. This was the man who had once been so composed, so unstoppable. Now he was cornered, sweat beading on his forehead. Ava, too, looked like a wild animal backed into a corner, eyes darting around the room. At that moment, a building security guard appeared at the door, knocking softly. Mr. Hartridge, you asked for security on standby, he announced quietly. Thank you, Hartridge replied, his tone like steel. I believe we might need you. Ava's eyes flitted towards the door, then back to Hartridge. She adopted a pleading tone. David, you know me. I've handled legal matters for some of the biggest players in the industry. I would never do anything to jeopardize your trust. Hartridge's face remained stony. I trusted Jordan, not you. And this evidence suggests you're at the center of a major ethical breach. If you don't have a verifiable explanation for each of these trades and how you obtained insider information, I have no choice but to protect the company from liability. Suddenly, Jordan snapped. Fear twisted into anger, and he pointed a trembling finger at Elizabeth. You did this. You ruined everything because you couldn't handle that I moved on. Elizabeth steadied her breathing, preparing to reply. But Hartridge cut in calm yet firm. Don't blame her for your poor decisions. You let your personal affair become a corporate liability. Something in Jordan cracked. He lunged toward Elizabeth as if to grab her documents or her phone, an irrational move likely spurred by desperation. But he never made contact. In a blink, the security guard stepped forward and intercepted Jordan, gripping his arms. Stand down, sir, the guard said, voice authoritative. Jordan struggled, but the guard was a solid wall of muscle. Ava shrieked. Let him go. This is a private matter. Hartridge shook his head, anger coloring his features. You just attempted to assault someone in my boardroom. Security remove Mr. Alberts from the premises. Jordan's eyes widened in disbelief. You can't do that. I'm on the board. Not anymore, Hartridge said grimly. I can and I will. You're suspended pending an internal investigation. Once that concludes, we'll determine your status. Now go and take Ms. Monroe with you. A second guard stepped in, guiding Ava toward the door as she protested threatening lawsuits and defamation claims. But her words rang hollow, overshadowed by the looming specter of an SEC investigation. Elizabeth stood off to the side, stunned by how quickly it had escalated from a tension-filled meeting to an outright meltdown. As Jordan and Ava were led out, Jordan craned his neck to shout at her. You'll pay for this, Elizabeth. Don't think you've won. But the threat carried little weight now. In that moment, Elizabeth felt the mixture of triumph and sorrow that comes with toppling a man she once loved. She hadn't wanted to see Jordan destroyed, only to protect herself and the life they had built together. But Jordan's actions and Ava's ambition had forced her hand. Hartridge dismissed the board members soon after instructing his legal team to cooperate fully with any investigations. He turned to Elizabeth with a sympathetic frown. "I'm sorry you had to endure this, Miss Alberts. I assure you we'll handle it lawfully. Whatever personal or marital disputes remain, I hope you find closure." Elizabeth gave him a small nod. "Thank you. I appreciate your fairness." She gathered her documents and left the skyscraper, the bright Texas sun striking her face as she stepped onto the street. The entire drama replayed in her mind. He let his mistress cut off my cards, but the CEO called security on him. She thought a bitter yet satisfying sense of irony spreading in her chest. She wasn't naive enough to think it was over. Legal battles would continue, depositions would be taken, and the divorce was far from final. But in this pivotal moment, she had taken back her power, standing against the storm that Jordan and Ava had unleashed. And for the first time in months, Elizabeth felt a glimmer of hope that she might in the end be free from their tyranny. In the weeks that followed, word spread like wildfire. News outlets picked up on rumors of insider trading linked to a high-profile tech investor, hinting that a major name was under investigation. It didn't take long for the rumor mill to connect the dots to Jordan Alberts and his mysterious attorney-turned-partner, Ava Monroe. Elizabeth watched from the sidelines, inundated with calls and messages from acquaintances, reporters, and sometimes even old college classmates she hadn't spoken to in years. She ignored most of them, preferring to let the legal process unfold without adding fuel to the media frenzy. Jordan, under immense legal and financial pressure, attempted to strike a deal if Elizabeth agreed to keep quiet and not testify against him or Ava. Regarding insider trading, he would give her a generous divorce settlement. The settlement included alimony, a hefty lump sum, and properties that would secure her financial future. However, Elizabeth refused any agreement that required her to lie or withhold the truth if subpoenaed. Nonetheless, she allowed her lawyer Michelle to work out a fair settlement that didn't involve perjury. Eventually, Jordan capitulated, realizing he had to salvage what he could from the marriage and business meltdown. The final settlement granted Elizabeth a significant portion of the assets, the mansion by Lake Travis, ironically, and a sizable share of Jordan's original tech startup. Meanwhile, Ava disappeared from the public eye, her reputation in tatters. Rumors surfaced that she'd fled the country perhaps to avoid legal repercussions, while others suggested she was hiding out in some luxury villa, waiting for the storm to pass. Either way, her days of meddling in Jordan's finances seemed to be over. Elizabeth didn't celebrate Jordan's downfall. She quietly grieved the end of a marriage that had started in love and partnership, yet she also felt relief and a renewed sense of self. She returned to the Lake Travis mansion, deciding whether to keep it or sell. The sweeping views of the water brought back memories, some of which felt like knives to her heart, others that warmed her soul. She began a new chapter in her life, leveraging her PR skills to start a consultancy focused on helping women entrepreneurs navigate both business and personal challenges. She named it Phoenix Rose Consulting, symbolizing rebirth and resilience. To her surprise, she found more joy in championing other women than she ever did, standing behind Jordan at glitzy galas. She kept in touch with Patricia from Tesla, who occasionally updated her on the ongoing investigations. Whether Jordan faced criminal charges depended on further evidence. But at least for Elizabeth, the immediate threat to her assets and well-being had lifted. David Hartridge reached out once, inviting Elizabeth to a dinner with the board, presumably to mend fences. Elizabeth politely declined. She had no desire to relive the tension of board meetings or navigate corporate politics, where her personal life became public fodder. She was grateful for Hartridge's stance, but preferred to build her future away from the chaos. In moments of solitude, Elizabeth reflected on the entire ordeal. She'd once believed that love, loyalty, and shared ambition could conquer anything. Yet she also realized that unchecked power and ego could corrode even the strongest of bonds. Jordan's betrayal had been a painful lesson, but it set her free to discover her own strengths and a life not tethered to someone else's rising star. Yes, heartbreak lingered, and healing was an ongoing process. But Elizabeth found herself waking each day with a sense of purpose. She'd gather with female founders at local co-working spaces, host workshops on media relations, and offer moral support to those feeling overshadowed by bigger players. Each time she saw a spark of confidence ignite in another woman's eyes, she felt her own sense of wholeness return. In time, Elizabeth would finalize the divorce, sign the deeds, and officially start over. A sense of calm settled within her, like the slow, tranquil waves on Lake Travis at dawn. Her story, the humiliating card cancellations, the public meltdown, the mistress's meddling, would become a cautionary tale, one she shared sparingly, only when it might help others. Despite the scars, Elizabeth refused to let bitterness define her. She chose growth empathy, and a belief that with the right support, anyone can rise from the ashes more formidable than before. Just as Elizabeth thought she had reached stable ground, fate tossed her another curveball. A month after the settlement, Michelle called her urgently. "The feds want to depose you," she said. "They uncovered new evidence Jordan may be involved in deeper crimes, bribery, money laundering. Ava might have orchestrated a network." Elizabeth's stomach dropped. Jordan never mentioned anything like that. "They've found offshore transactions and documents with his signature," Michelle said grimly. 2 days later, Elizabeth sat in a stark federal office, flanked by Michelle and 2 serious agents. They questioned her about Jordan's finances, Ava's role, the card cancellations, and philanthropic events that may have masked backdoor deals. Elizabeth stuck to the facts. She neither speculated nor dramatized. One agent, impressed, said, "You've been very helpful, Ms. Alberts. This case is significant." She left emotionally drained but relieved. She hadn't been dragged down with Jordan, but the storm wasn't over. Whispers followed Jordan was hiding at a secluded ranch, dodging the press. Ava had vanished. More subpoenas were issued. An indictment loomed. Elizabeth stayed focused on her consultancy, channeling stress into helping other women navigate business pitfalls. Her story, once painful, became a symbol of warning and strength. Then came the headlines: Jordan Alberts indicted for insider trading, fraud, and obstruction. Ava was named but still missing. The scandal rocked the tech world. Elizabeth issued a single statement. "I'm saddened by Jordan's choices. I've cooperated fully with authorities and continue to rebuild my life." Eventually, Jordan pled guilty to a lesser charge, offering a tearful courtroom apology. Elizabeth watched from home, tears in her eyes, not from triumph, but quiet grief for the man she once loved. Still, she understood consequences had to follow actions. That night, beneath the soft moonlight over Lake Travis, Elizabeth allowed herself one last cry for the past that died and the hope still waiting ahead. Life has a way of testing our fortitude when we least expect it. Elizabeth Alberts began this journey as a devoted wife, only to see her world upended by betrayal and financial sabotage. Yet what she lost in illusions, she gained in unbreakable resilience. Standing up to powerful forces and calling out wrongdoing isn't easy, but it's sometimes the only way to protect your dignity and your future. If you found this story gripping, insightful, or inspiring, we invite you to be a part of our community. Like this video, share it with friends who need a reminder that courage can emerge from chaos, and subscribe for more real-life drama and empowering tales. Let Elizabeth's story serve as a beacon, no matter how ruthless the betrayal. There's always a path to reclaim your power and build a brighter tomorrow. You too can rise like a phoenix.